Thanks, Obama. He's calling out Trump's toxic masculinity. And you know what? I got to say, it's about time somebody called out Trump's toxic masculinity. At a time when Kamala Harris is sinking among men, she is losing male voters en masse. This is what they decided to do. No, Trump's not a real man. Yo, let me play it straight. You've got men who want to be women playing in women's sports. This is a huge issue. They're calling it a sleeper issue. OK, I'm civil libertarian. OK, I'm a slightly liberal dude, but I'm for Donald Trump. And I'm going to tell you this. If you are older than 18 and you want to, take pills and do what you want to do with your life, I mostly say, OK, do your thing. I say mostly, right? Because there's a lot of issues where maybe we say we got to have some restrictions. But if you want to live your life as a woman to the best of your abilities, you're not a woman, you're biologically male, then I say, fine, do your thing. But this is a sleeper issue because parents are upset at what's happening with their kids in these sports. So when you've got things like this, when you've got gender ideology, it's not playing to anybody when Obama comes out and says, that's not what real strength is. Trump is not masculine. We got this clip from Bill Maher where he's like, why do people think Trump is masculine? He's got bronzer. He never shuts up. And Buck Sexton breaks it down. But let me show you Barack Obama first, and let's talk about what masculinity is and how you, as the Democrats, think that by insulting and demeaning men, blaming them for everything, they've been running these memes for years where they're like, you've got a bowl of M&Ms. 10% of them are poison. Go ahead, take a handful. Not all men, right? Yet nobody wants to hear that because bad people exist of all types, that means one whole group of people is particularly bad. So now you've got men who have been demonized by the Democratic Party and the woke ideologues and gender ideologists for so long that they're leaving the Democratic Party and they're going to Donald Trump. Why? Because Trump is brash. He's aggressive. He's a bully. And people are like, at least he's standing in front of me. And the Democrats are attacking me. MSNBC, look at this. As Donald Trump hurls increasingly vile insults at Kamala Harris, former President Barack Obama, campaigning for Harris, admonished men for supporting Trump. Are you kidding me? I'm sorry, gentlemen. I've noticed this especially with some men who seem to think Trump's behavior, the bullying and the putting people down, is a sign of strength. And I'm here to tell you that's not what real strength is. It never has been. Real strength is about working hard and carrying a heavy load without complaining. Well, I seem to recall when Dr. Jordan Peterson said, find the heaviest thing you can carry and carry it, they called him a Nazi. Not kidding. Because he said, we have free speech. You can't compel me to speak. It's absurd. They were like, you're alt-right. They attacked him when he simply said, clean your room, be responsible. They attacked him for it. And these young men who were looking for a mission, a purpose to fulfill their desires to be good people did not find it with you. And so they turned to people that give them a modicum of what they've been looking for. So you wonder why it is Andrew Tate gets so popular. You wonder why it is Donald Trump gets so popular. You do not get to spit in the face of young men and then act surprised when they abandon you for anyone willing to show a tiny bit of leadership, gratitude. Because the message you're going to get from Jordan Peterson and from Andrew Tate and from Donald Trump, whether you like their characters or not, I think Jordan Peterson's a good dude. Many are critical of Andrew Tate for a variety of reasons. I think much of this criticism is appropriate. Don't know a lot about the guy, but there's a lot to criticize the guy over. I'm not saying those cases against them are real, because as far as I can tell, they're not. I'm just saying you got these guys that are worthy of criticism, but you know what they do? They look in the eyes of the young men and they say, you're worth it. And you can be the greatest. There's a video from Andrew Tate. You can rag on him all you want. But this video, he says, rocket ship going to the moon doesn't stop halfway. It takes off, it keeps going, it burns until it gets there. You cannot start and then rest and take a break. You need to keep pushing. He's got another video where he says, it doesn't matter how you feel. As a man, you will wake up and you may be sad. You may be tired. You may be depressed. It doesn't matter what you feel. What matters is you get up and you do your job. Now, by all means, criticize Andrew Tate for whatever you want, but those statements smack right in the face of these young men, and they contrast it with the Democrats have been saying. You are toxically masculine. The things you want are bad things. You're a bully. You're wrong. You are privileged. So a young man who can't find a job, who ends up homeless, men who are more likely to try and take their own lives, more likely to end up homeless, more likely to be victims of violent crime, are sitting there saying, why do you hate me so much? And then they see Andrew Tate saying you could be a rocket to the moon. You got to work And they say, anything you say, bro, I take that message. That's all it takes. All it takes. But they don't give it to you. They get you this. That's not what real strength is. That's not real strength. You have beaten down Donald Trump. They tried to kill him. They, as in the assassins. The people who hate him have stopped at nothing to drag this man to the depths. He's sacrificed his personal wealth for being president. Now, you can say it's because he wants the ego. It's because he wants to be. I don't care. Donald Trump is showing young men sacrifice. He's showing them hard work in the face of adversity. Don't you get it? You are lining them up to be knocked over. Donald Trump may be Bill Maher. Let me play this clip for you from Bill Maher. Donald Trump may be a guy who won't shut up, who's a braggart, who lies all the time, who's overweight with bronzer on his face. And does it shock you at the least bit that they view him as more masculine than you? Does it shock you in the least bit that young men think Trump is more masculine than anything the Democratic Party has to offer? Because y'all have treated young men like trash. You've blamed them for too many problems. Not going to say all of them, but too often. You've talked about male privilege, men who have been falsely accused, who have gone to jail or been kicked out of the university for things they did not do, and they are saying enough. So let me play the clip for you. I want to show you what Buck Sexton has to say about this too. The Democrats' male problem.
There's a huge gender gap. And, you know, I've done this one to death too, but, you know, someone has to explain to me why people who love Trump see him as this icon of masculinity, this man who I used, you know.
Because am I going to contrast Donald Trump and Bill Maher? Bill, bro, let's be real. Donald Trump's a tall guy. He's an aggressive guy. He doesn't take crap from anybody. He's recently taken a bullet, stood up and yelled, fight, fight, fight. And they say, what does the left say? What an idiot. Anybody who stands up while getting shot up is an idiot. You know, there are a lot of men who are idiots. They lead the charge. I'm going to say this. I know I got to play the clip. Donald Trump may be dumb for standing up with bullets flying. Sure. But I think Donald Trump made a choice. He wanted everyone to know that he was okay, that he was refusing to back down. With blood coming down the side of his face, he said, fight, fight, fight. I can't tell you how many young men probably saw that and said, I wish I was like him. Bronzer, overweight Donald Trump. Bill, what have you're an elitist in your LA studio, sitting there with a smirk on your face saying, oh, people like Donald Trump. Do you think young men look at you and they're like, I wish I was a suit and tie wearing smarmy guy on TV? Now, by all means, you can criticize Trump and say all these things about him, but he stood up in that moment. I told this to Ian Crossland on Timcast IRL. I know some of you may have heard it, but I'm going to say it again. We idolize and champion the idea that there was a king who led his men into battle. What an idiot. He's going to die. So the king, standing in front of all of his horsemen, his cavalry, and he runs his sword across all of their swords, and these men feel inspired. The king has clashed with their swords or their spears, and he's in front of them, and he will lead the charge himself. And he says to his men, I will never ask you to do something I would not do myself. Stand with me. And the king leads the charge. But this is crazy. Without the king, who will lead the men? He's bringing himself great personal risk, running full speed first into the enemy line. And the men are inspired. And they know, so long as he is willing, so by God, I am willing too. We will stand by that man. And that's what people see with Donald Trump standing up and saying, fight, fight, fight. He may be running headfirst into danger, but he's doing it to inspire you. He's doing it to say, I will not back down. And heavens, when he returned to Butler, PA, he goes, as I was saying, epic. Now, here we go.
Just never shuts up under 2 pounds of bronzer. Yep. And always complaining and whining. Why do you see this as an epitome of masculinity? And is it good if it is?
I think that the gender issue that Democrats have is much broader than Donald Trump specifically. I mean, Trump also, there's the narrative, he's a billionaire who's married to a supermodel, who's become president on the first try, who, you know, I mean, look, people can say whatever they want about it, but there is that component of an alpha male who's ultra successful and is probably about to become leader of the free world again. But to the issue of where Democrats are on this, I mean, I don't think you would be able to get many Democrats, elected Democrats, for example, to come on, I don't know if any of them honestly would, to come on this show and say, I don't think that a 18-year-old who identifies as a woman should be able to play on a girls' team. Or rather, I don't think that's a problem. Or they do think it's a problem, rather. They think that, they won't say that they view that as an issue. And so when you talk about the gender identity cult that the Democrat Party has embraced, and then you're like, why don't we have more people that are pro-masculinity on the Republican side? There's also all these total charlatans going around who basically hate men and are always talking about toxic masculinity, and it's a Democrat reality. And really, the truth is there are very few efforts that are made, I would say more broadly in politics, right and left, but definitely on the right, to speak to men who are in a difficult position right now. You know, female earnings relative to men, female college graduation relative to men. Women have made all this tremendous progress, and now we're in this society where, you know, very few men tend to have a lot of options when it comes to mates, and a lot of guys, they're not going to start the next billion-dollar company, and they're wondering, you know, what's in it for me? And then when they're told, oh yeah, by the way, like, we're putting immigrants up in 4-star hotels in New York City who just got here yesterday. Sorry that you can't pay your bills.
Buck,
No, but I'm just speaking to what the reality is.
I'm so sorry that men have had to now endure the same inequities that women have.
The same inequities. You know, this is it. Zuby has a great thread where he said that women get lied to and men are told the truth. Why? Men are disposable. It's my words, not his. But a guy who is trying to succeed in some kind of industry or whatever, he sucks at his job. People are going to be like, bro, you're just not good enough at this. Why? They got no reason to lie to you. You're offering nothing of value. The man must produce. So the guy says, I'm gonna build a birdhouse. It's a crappy birdhouse. Someone says, hey, your birdhouse sucks. I ain't buying it. Women, on the other hand, women are the creators of life. And so men and women are constantly lying to women, trying to earn favor from them. I'm sorry, men have to deal with the inequities. Keep saying that. Keep saying that. So the young man who is like, why are we more likely to be homeless? Why are we more likely to be the victims of violent crime? Why can't I find a job? Then they hear this and they say, enough. Donald Trump gets my vote. Let me tell you about my life, lady. The inequities. Okay, so when I'm 16, and I come from the south side of Chicago and I need a job, guess what I hear? Everywhere I go, not hiring, not hiring, not hiring. All the restaurants, all the stores were only hiring young women. That's the truth. I remember there was an ice cream shop and I was like, I need a job. Do you think to my friends, I think, you know, the young women that were in my neighborhood and went to the same school, I was like, you think you could help me get a job? And they're like, oh, they won't hire you. They don't hire dudes. They only hire women. And I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do? Mow lawns? I don't know. I ended up working at Portillo's Hot Dogs. And it was fascinating how I was treated like crap. So I quit. Treated like crap. I remember when I was 21, turned 21, I was living in Wrigleyville. And I spent 2 years working at the airport. This was fascinating. Let me tell you this. I worked at O'Hare. And I'm going to pause real quick and say, I don't got a chip on my shoulder about all this stuff. I'm telling you what life was like. So when you want to talk about privilege and you don't know what you're talking about. I remember I was working at O'Hare Airport. I was making $10 an hour, eventually got a promotion, got $11 an hour. And so after working and after taxes, I'm taking home like $50 per day. Yeah, $50 after taxes. I couldn't pay rent. I couldn't get an apartment. I remember my buddy was doing HVAC stuff and comparable salary, comparable wage. And his sister was a server making $200 a night. And I'm like, man, how is this possible? Well, because when you're a server and you're at a restaurant with a decent price, you're getting tipped really well. And then I remember I was living in Wrigleyville and I went to a restaurant. I said, I'd like to be a server. I used to work at my family's cafe. I've got tons of experience. And guess what? The entire staff was women. And then I remember when I went to every bar up and down Clark Street in Wrigleyville. And I said, 21, looking for work. My family owned a cafe. I can do any of these jobs. And they all said no. Why? Because service industry only hires women. And I'm like, well, I don't know what I can do. Like, they pay better. And I wasn't making enough money doing labor. And they told me I was privileged. And they told me I had it all. And so when I was homeless several times and I slept on a park bench or I was sleeping in my car, thank God I had a car, but it got repossessed eventually. I'm thinking to myself, wow, look at all of my privilege and all of my struggle. But you know what? The reality is men get an advantage from this. They do. Because living through the hardship makes you tough as nails. It makes you strong. And this is what men have to endure. Women do get to have things better. That's reality. And men who get salty over it and complain about it, well, cry more. That's life. See, I think men are better off. It's an advantage. She can say, oh, I'm sorry, men have to deal with the inequities that women had to deal with. Oh, please. Spare me. Women are substantially less likely to be homeless. In my experience, and it's not, obviously not every single woman, not every single man, but I never met a single woman who became homeless because every single time she was in trouble, the women that I knew, they'd live with some guy. an older guy who had money. I'm not saying every single one experiences this. I'm just saying there are opportunities for women that men don't have. Talk about privilege. Men have to fight and earn and struggle through it. And then they claim, oh, men get all the privileges. The reality is it's a game of pros and cons. Women have some advantages and some negatives. Men have some advantages that women don't. And there's some negatives that men have that women don't. That's the reality. But let's play more.
I mean, the idea that there is, but think about this. What you're saying is,
this is why Kamala's going to lose, by the way. This is why Kamala will lose.
Well, why?
Yep.
Because an articulate woman made a point?
No, because you, instead of addressing that men can have concerns that should be spoken to politically, especially working class men who are feeling the pinch right now economically, you know, the media on the coast, and look, I'm a part of it. I grew up in New York City. I grew up in Manhattan. I understand. Just kind of mocks these people as if they count. And Donald Trump speaks to them and for them, whether he's of them or not, does not matter.
Buck.
So does Andrew Tate.
I do appreciate you trying to bridge the gap between what you think I'm going to say and what I actually said. But I'm actually going to just tell you what I said. What I said was...
These hoots and these cheers are Kamala's polls going down.
I'm sorry that men have to confront the same inequities that women. The next point I'm going to make, which is not the one you were going to make, is that when people are talking about masculinity, I do think the way it's being described is not the discussion you're having about gender in sports and gender identity, but instead the idea of how I think white men, and you've talked about this on your show and others, feel as though they are disenfranchised and being left behind by either the progress that women are making or otherism or the browning of America because there is the notion that they are entitled to be in a certain position they're no longer in. But the reality is progress works such that everyone must go in the direction of it. And so if some people are being left behind in part because society is making equity more of a position that we favor, then that is a reflection of where we ought to be going, not...
Whoa! Did you hear this? She's saying, if you, as a man, as a white man, are being left behind, are downtrodden, are neglected, that's the direction we have to go.
Not a condemnation of progress itself.
She outright just said that if you are left behind, so be it, because we will not condemn progress. And progress is your suffering and your children's suffering and your hardship for the benefit of someone else. I reject that 100%. But I appreciate that she said it. And I hope Bill Maher says more like it. Because, my friends, I got to tell you, as more and more black men and men in general shift away from Kamala Harris, and they keep doubling down, despite people like Buck Sexton trying to say people are suffering and they're asking for attention. And she goes, that's too bad because it's progress. The suffering of others is progress? Well, because they were better off. No, they weren't. That dude who grew up in Appalachia, the white folk who live in Appalachia, who live in trailers, whose families make $8,000 a year, who can't afford health care, who can't find work, who can't get an education, they deserve to suffer for your progress. When you grow up in big cities, you're a wealthy TV show, a radio host. Disgusting. I can say this for everybody. If you are black, white, Asian, Mexican, whatever, Hispanic, Honduran, if you are poor and you grew up in this country is for you. This country is opportunity and everyone deserves it. And no one should be attacked based on their race, their identity. That should not be the basis for why we say someone should or should not be suffering. We should say that all people are created equal. The founding fathers, they created a vision and they did not hold themselves to it. They said this is a nation. All men are created equal. We have inalienable rights. But there were people in this country who were enslaved when that happened. Compromises were made, and some people didn't have the same rights as others. And we fight for those rights. But now the left misconstrues what a right really is. I say, when it comes to rights, we're talking about you can speak, you can live, you can defend yourself, you can work, you can earn, and you should not be denied for arbitrary reasons. It's very difficult to enforce. It is. Somebody wants to come in your restaurant and they're acting a fool and then they claim it was racist, and it's tough to enforce. But let these people live in this world, because this segment right here hit the ball home. Buck Sexton is begging them, understand that men are upset. And she goes, too bad it's progress. Well, okay, they're voting for Trump then. You can try and win them over, but they do not care. They could try to win them over. They're not gonna. Instead, they're going to say, bye-bye. We don't need you. We don't want you. Well, so be it. It's like that meme where they say, this movie's not for white men. And then when the movie bombs, they go, why won't white men watch our movie? Well, you didn't want them to. You didn't want to make something that had mass appeal. You wanted to attack and insult people. So shout out to Bill Maher for hosting this panel. Because I got to tell you, he probably just cost Kamala Harris another couple points. But we'll see. We already know in the polls that Kamala is suffering among men. Male voters don't want to. Many of them don't want to vote for a woman in the first place. So you better try your hardest to earn their vote, but they don't want to do it. Let this lady revel in it. They don't want to do the work required to pitch somebody on sales. I'm going to tell you this. If I was running for office, I'm not going to go to a Democrat and say, you're a crazy person. I don't want your vote. I'm going to go to them and say, what can I do for you? How can I make your life better? Some of these people are crazy and you can't. But could you imagine going to a voter and saying, we don't care about you. We don't want or need your vote, and you should suffer. Okay, well, congratulations. You just made an enemy. Best of luck. Thanks, Obama. I'm going to wrap it up there. Next segment is coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. You can follow the show. You can follow me on X and Instagram at Timcast. Leave us a good review on the audio if you're listening, and share the show if you like it. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you on the next segment.